Science and the Bible agree.
That is a fascinating claim because the people who actually do the science, over 80% of them don't believe in any God, and the ones that do don't believe in organized religion, much less the Christian God. So I'm waiting with bated breath to see how you know more than the actual scientists.
The universe has a beginning. The Big Bang clearly points to the fact that the universe is not eternal.
Well, that's not what actually Big Bang cosmology teaches. It doesn't say that there was once absolutely nothing, and then this nothing exploded into something. There was still something before the expansion of the universe. I'm not aware of any cosmologist or physicist that thinks there was ever absolutely nothing. Even the famed Lawrence Krauss, which theists love because he's not a complete atheist, in his book Something from Nothing, dedicates an entire chapter, chapter 9, to explaining that nothing technically isn't nothing, it is still something.
Secondly, science and the Bible agree. The universe is so finely tuned, it allows for human life to exist.
If the Earth is finely tuned, there's a lot of questions that need answered. Why is it that only 43% of the planet is actually habitable? Why is 97% of the water on the planet poisonous to drink? Why is the sun, something we need for nutrients, actually causing us skin cancer? Why do nearly 100,000 people a year get executed in natural disasters? If this is fine-tuning, I'd hate to see what bad tuning is. And if you think that the human body is finely tuned, we've got even more questions. Why have millions and millions of children been unalived? Because their food went down the wrong pipe, because somebody who created this body, theoretically, put the two holes too close together, and it's very easy for you to choke while you're doing the simple act of feeding yourself, which is required to live. Why is it also true that infant mortality rates in history have been incredibly high, upwards of 40%, and maternal mortality rates as high as 2%, even within the last 100 to 150 years? Why is it that miscarriages account for 10 to 20% of all pregnancies? If life begins at conception, then God is executing 20% of these babies. Why is it that 63% of adults have to wear glasses and 7 million Americans are technically blind according to the law? Why is it that most people will lose their teeth? Currently, 19% of our population has to wear dentures. Why is it that children get cancer while they're only weeks, months, or even out of the womb old?
Science and the Bible agree. Information densely packed in the DNA of a single cell demands an intelligent mind. You cannot have information without a mind.
Again, this talking point isn't good for the creationist. If our DNA is like this divine code written by God, then why is it that upwards of 70% of it is actually just considered junk? It's basically inoperable code, but it gets passed down from one generation to the next. Why is it that we have literally hundreds of endogenous retroviruses that found its way into our genome that we continue to pass down? Why is it that our code is so susceptible to being damaged and then passed on to our children? If this is evidence of design, then it's evidence of a bad design. A good coder would not have had these types of errors in the code, and they certainly wouldn't have had self-replicating code that self-replicated all of the errors that it encountered along the way. And in case anyone's wondering, I write code for a living. This is not how good code is written.
And God is the most explosive mind in the universe.
This is kind of a useless statement. There's no observation, there's no science that would suggest that our mind can exist outside of our brains, or that our mind is anything but an emergent property or attribute of our brain, of our neurological system. So we've done studies, we've tried to test the theory. Sam Parnia recently set up 2 studies, the AWARE project. One is ongoing, the AWARE project number 2, where they're literally trying to find out when people experience near-death experiences and they claim they're leaving your body, can they confirm anything that would validate their out-of-body experience? And nobody ever has yet. We've done other studies where we've triggered out-of-body experiences using deep brain stimulation or DMT, and then we tried to have those patients confirm anything that they wouldn't be able to confirm unless they're outside of the body, and nobody ever has. We've tried over and over again to see if out-of-body experiences, the mind leaving the brain, is even possible, and it's never been confirmed, and it probably never will be confirmed. As far as science is aware, the mind is a product of the actual brain. You can't say there's an immaterial mind floating out there in outer space that is just interacting with reality, when we know that the reality we live in requires a mind to be an attribute of the brain.
Science and the Bible agree. There has to be a creative mechanism.
I would love for you to tell me a single scientist that has said in the modern era that there needs to be a creative mechanism that is not natural. Because as far as I know from science, any posited creative mechanism is just a naturalistic phenomenon, doesn't require a god at all.
The Bible insists there must be a creative mechanism, and that creative mechanism is a personal being, not a mechanism, the living God.
If this ethereal mind floating out in space is a personal being, a personal deity that wants relationship with his creation, then somebody has to answer the problem of divine hiddenness. Billions and billions of people have been searching for this God, and he refuses to be found. The only time there's claims of him being found is when the claims are way in the past and they can't actually be investigated. If he was real and he wanted people to believe he was real, then the onus is on him to give us a good reason to believe that he's real, or just make himself apparent.
Science and the Bible agree. Certain life forms are irreducibly complex. A single living cell is too complex to have evolved from one state to the next until it becomes a living cell.
Irreducible complexity is just a fancier form of the argument from incredulity. You can't understand how the evolution happened, therefore it must be God. But if you read the science, irreducible complexity is not a problem for scientists. There are papers being published on this currently that explain how everything functions and how all the things in the human cells, the various human cells that we have making up our body, how they evolved. It's not really an irreducible complexity issue for scientists. It's only for creationists because they're not reading the science.
Instead, God created life. He created the living cell.
And that is an adorable claim, but it's a useless claim until you back it up with actual evidence. I could just say that magic farting ponies created human cells, or I can say that pixies or the tooth fairy created the human cell. Unless you're going to demonstrate that it was your God who did it, then making the claim is a waste.
Science and the Bible contradict each other in no way.
This is just a very embarrassing claim. Anyone who reads the book knows the problems. For example, God created light, according to Genesis 1, before any light sources were even created. He created rivers before there was rain. Rain is how rivers form. He created a firmament, a hard dome over the earth that we know doesn't exist. In Leviticus, it says that rock badgers chew cud. They literally don't. They lack the ability to regurgitate altogether physiologically. In the book of Deuteronomy, God thinks it's okay to stone virgins if they don't bleed on their wedding night, but only about half of women actually bleed the first time they do the deed. It says in the book of Genesis that you can mate animals in front of striped poles and they'll produce striped and spotted offspring. In the book of Joshua, it says that the sun stood still. If the sun actually stood still, the earth would have stopped rotating, causing complete havoc. And you better believe other people on that planet would have wrote about it, and nobody ever did because it never happened. Also, germ theory wasn't developed, so the Bible blames everything on unclean spirits. Unironically, everybody in the ancient world blamed unclean spirits for sickness. The fact of the matter is, the Bible only knows things about the world that other people from its region and from its time period ever knew. It never contributed anything that was unknown. So no, science and the Bible don't agree. That's why people become less religious the more science they learn.